Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, which is brought to you by Shared Services Link in association with Redwood. Today, we are looking at the Jabil case study. We're looking at 4 automation game changers for R2R. My name is Susie West. I'm the founder and CEO at Shared Services Link, and I'm delighted to be introducing Scott Barone, who is Finance PMO Director at Jabil, and Shaq Akhtar, who is SVP Finance Automation at Redwood Software. So great to have Scott and Shaq with us today. You, of course, have a key role to play, which is to make sure that you get all your questions answered. So post those through to me on the GoToWebinar panel, and I'll put those questions to Scott and Shaq in the last 10 minutes of this webinar. If you'd like to listen again, these slides will be made available on sharedserviceslink.com. Right, let's jump into the content. So this is a really exciting story. I know that many of you struggle with one thing in particular. I mean, we all struggle with many things in GBS, but there's one thing that routinely sticks out for many shared service organizations that I certainly correspond with. And it's the fact that IT tends to block a lot of initiatives that affect your process and the performance of your process. And it's in your interest to see that your process is as efficient and effective as it can be, and it relies usually on technology to help you get to your kind of end state goal. If IT blocks your kind of desired investment into a technology program, then you're kind of left floundering. There's only so much you can do. So in Jabil, it's a very different situation. They have a team which is called FDT, which Scott's going to tell us more about later. And the very existence of this team gives Jabil and the finance organization a huge advantage. The FDT team means that projects move to a state of being in flight seamlessly and without being hindered by IT, without getting stuck in some kind of bottleneck. So they realize that program within months rather than waiting potentially years to see the results of a project. The FDT team is optimizing a number of exciting technologies, which we're going to be hearing about in a few minutes. The game-changing tool that we're focusing on in detail today is a technology that most of you would be very familiar with. It's Redwood Software. And Redwood is helping Jabil, this $30 billion turnover organization, automate a number of processes and sub-processes, such as entities close, receivables management, intercompany netting. And we're going to be focusing on these areas. We're going to be focusing on the 4 game changes that Jabil has experienced as a result of partnering with the Redwood software. And I'm going to be handing over to Scott very, very shortly. But just before I do that, let's have a look at 2 poll questions. So coming up on your screen, please, if you could tell us about your own situation when it comes to which areas challenge you the most in your record to report process today. So please tick all that are appropriate to you. Would you say it's journal entry management, account reconciliation and certification? Would you say it's intercompany reconciliation, accruals, provisions and reclassifications? Or is it your closed process management? So which maybe 2 or 3 areas are the most challenging to you in your R2R process today? Please do select all that apply. We're on about 65% of you responding. So if you haven't already responded, please do so. Those in the poll. In 3, 2, 1, let's have a look at the results. We closed out about 63%, so thanks for that. The winner here at 63% is account reconciliation certification, followed in second place at 48% by accruals, provisions and reclassifications. And then 44% of you talking about journal entry, 37% intercompany, 37% closed process management. So thank you for that. I'd like to ask one more poll, and then I'm going to be handing over to Scott. So do you have a finance transformation initiative underway? Yes, it's currently active. We are planning to start within the next 12 months. We are planning to start in 2025, or no plans as yet. So which one is most appropriate to your situation? Yes, it's currently active. We are planning to start in the next 12 months. We are planning to start in 2025, or no plans at this time. So please do let us know. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the results coming up on the screen now. Okay. So 50% of you are saying you have some kind of transformation program in flight. 8% of you are looking to start in 2024, 4% in 2025, and just under 40% of you say that you've got no plans for a finance transformation initiative at this time. Okay, thanks for that. Right, over to you, please, Shaq.
Thank you, Susie. So I just wanted to introduce the session. A few slides to tell you about Redwood, what this entity close means and where we impact the most. Redwood is an automation platform. We've specifically focused on record to report and entity close, specifically within that. And our objective through our automation platform is to make a close non-event. Redwood, as a company, has been around for 30 plus years. We now have actually slides already out of date, 500 plus employees. We're a global company, 3,000 customers. We're very much embedded into SAP platform. Also, we integrate with other technology, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. So where I wanted to go, let me tell you a little bit about now our solution areas. So as mentioned, Redwood is a platform which connects to underlying systems, SAP or other systems, from data extraction as well as hosting. It is a single platform, but the way our users see it, the way the UX is organized, the way you can implement it, it is, for all intents and purposes, it is modular. But because it's a platform, it is inherently integrated with each other. So if you have an exception in account reconciliation, you want to post a journal, of course you can do that because it's all integrated. If you post an accrual, and it's all inherently and automatically available for account reconciliation data, and all of that entails. And on top of that, the close management sits and orchestrates the entire close, not just orchestrating the close checklist, but also actually executing the underlying task that is required, whether it's intercompany, whether it's accruals creation, whether it's recurring journal or preparing reports, etc. So that's our platform. Just want to touch on now what is the close and where the efforts are. So if you look at the close, what you're looking at is a green little bump here, which is group close. So everybody has to do that. We do that perhaps, you do that perhaps once a month, once a period, once a quarter, once a year. And if depending on your structure, maybe a couple of times a regional close. But fundamentally, all of the entities that you have, whether you have 30 entities or 300 entities, they all have to be closed before the trial balances can be uploaded or passed over to group close. So if you look at the effort within the entity close, vast majority of the effort is there, because if you have 100 companies, you have to close it 100 times. I know I'm preaching to the converted. But when you look at the workload within that, 60 to 80% of the work is in those 6 areas on the right-hand side. Accruals, provisions, and reclassification, which can represent as much as 40 to 50% of the close. Then you have intercompany, perhaps depending on your complexity, kind of 10, 20% reconciliation. Reconciliation itself, because some reconciliations have to be performed, like sub-ledger reconciliation, bank reconciliation, perhaps IFRS 15. Account reconciliation itself can be outside of the close, but we do provide the solution for that. And of course, underneath, if you're an SAP customer, then a whole bunch of activities you have to do within the SAP close transactions. And our objective is to reduce that human activity, the workload that you do, that is just coming up. So we automate those things on the right in its entirety, and fundamentally then reducing the workload that you do within the entity close. And I'll come back at the end after Scott to talk about 1 or 2 other customers that have achieved this level of benefit. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you, Shaq. So let's move to our next poll question coming up on your screen now. How automated are you across your R2R process today? Would you say you're highly automated? Most activities are automated, moderate levels of automation, 50% manual, 50% automated, low levels of automation. We've started but have a way to go, or no levels of automation whatsoever. You're completely manual. So if you could just let us know how automated you are across your R2R processes today. And we'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Again, just over about 63% of you responding there. So that's great. So 6% of you rate yourselves as highly automated. Congratulations to you. 25% are kind of halfway through, 50% manual, 50% automated. 56% of you, so really the majority, low levels of automation, we've started but have a way to go. And 13% of you are currently seeing no levels of automation within R2R whatsoever. Okay, so thanks for sharing that. Interesting. And now we'd like to hand over to Scott, please.
Great. Thanks, Susie. Appreciate it very much. I'm going to talk today about the 4 game-changing benefits of R2R at Jabil. The agenda that we'll be following is I'll give you a little bit of background on Jabil and about our systems team. A little bit of information about life before automation, what the game changers are, and kind of our current results and benefits that we've achieved. So the Jabil and systems background. You've probably never heard of Jabil. Jabil is a contract manufacturer. We don't manufacture anything for ourselves. We manufacture for our customers. We're a $30+ billion corporation. We have over 140,000 employees worldwide and 100+ sites strategically located around the world in 25+ different companies. So we are a very global company. A little bit about our team, about the finance digital transformation team. We actually sit within finance. We actually report up through our CFO. Our digital transformation team own the major finance systems for forecasting, planning, consolidations. As I said, we sit within finance and report up to the CFO. We differentiate ourselves by removing the bureaucracy and roadblocks that typically sit within IT. Don't get me wrong, IT does a very good job with what they do. They have a lot of hurdles and structures and things that they have in place that they have to follow. With having these systems, if you will, sitting outside of IT, it allows us to be very nimble, very quick in terms of turning things around. We are constantly changing, at least on a quarterly basis, sometimes monthly, but quarterly. Our hierarchies, where things sit with what customer, within what company code, and so forth like that. And in order to make those changes, we have to be very nimble. We have to be very quick. We have to make things happen, in weeks, months versus years. Our team actually come out of the business, if you will. So some of our team actually sat within IT. Some of our team sat within the actual site finance, things of that nature like that. But have a very deep business acumen, which allows us to actually, when we're working with our finance customers, to challenge ideas, to challenge concepts, designs, and things of that nature like that. We have a very good depth of the finance knowledge. We're proactive in suggesting and implementing change too, and driving strategic initiatives within finance. Realistically, you could look at us as being as an internal consultant. We have that depth and breadth of experience to be able to activate those different types of things. So, prior to Redwood, we actually, as a prior to Redwood, we've implemented a number of finance systems that we have in here. Redwood now is part of that. But if you look at our landscape or you look at our architecture, the major systems within finance, as I said, sit outside of IT. So we do our closing, our consolidations within Cognos Controller, which has all the information that we need in order to report to the SEC. We have IBM TM1, which does all of our forecasting. We actually have a system. It's a software application called Pega that we do all of our budgeting with, all of our capital planning. And then we also have Redwood that allows us to help us with our finance processes and moving through the landscape on there. There are some systems here, if you want to look at it from a whole holistic perspective, that SAP, we have 4 instances of SAP that we utilize for our ERP systems. And then we sit some other systems on top of that to manage our day-to-day life, if you will. So prior to that, from a systems perspective, we actually went out and we looked. We knew that there was a lot of things that were ripe for automation. We within Jabil, did a did a study and did a survey and worked with our worked with our sites and so forth like that. It was really interesting on the poll that we took just a little bit ago when you were talking about the R2R challenges. You'll see that you guys actually responded the same way that our sites responded in terms of the balance sheet certification reconciliations. That actually boiled up to the top for us in terms of things that we should be looking at and that we should tackle. But above and beyond that, we looked at a number of other processes, and through that, we determined that we could probably save, as we benchmarked against other companies and what they were doing and where they were going and so forth like that. We could probably save around 240,000 hours per year in the complete close process, not just certifications, but with a number of other processes that we develop in house and with Redwood. But being realistic and being understanding of Jabil being Jabil, what Jabil is, we probably could achieve 40 to 50% of that reduction in manual effort along the way. So I'll get into more in depth on those benefits and what some of those results are. But as I said, coming out of the gates, we decided to focus on balance sheet certification. But we also, when we look at the Redwood tool, Redwood does have a number of processes that they have that are out of the box, or pillars that they would call them. We also are addressing other needs that are internal to Jabil, but that the Redwood platform allows us to do that. And the mantra of what we do from an FDT perspective of being able to be nimble, being able to be quick. For instance, our intercompany netting and forecasting allows us to automate the manual data retrieval of intercompany payments that are due between our sites and so forth like that, accumulate that and move the money around that needs to be done in a very quick fashion. We also did a journal approval verification report that allows us to retrieve the manual journals that were posted, look at who approved them, and make sure everything is in the right order from that perspective. So, like I said, we did that. We did the the analysis. We did the surveys and drove for that. That's kind of our life before automation, if you will. And what drove us to looking at Redwood? Well, we were looking at 4 game changers that we believe Redwood really helps us to achieve. Number one is the time savings. When you look at time savings, especially when you look at this tool and the focus is there, the majority of this is around the month-end close. Anytime you can save an hour, and just something minimal of an hour out of the month-end close, you folks probably know that there's a lot of rigor, there's a lot of structure, there's a lot of elbow grease that goes into that. Anything that we can do that we can save time is hugely beneficial, at least to Jabil. There's also a cost savings that are associated with this. And that cost savings, some of it is soft savings, some of it is hard savings, or cost avoidance. So with utilizing the Redwood tool, it allowed us to actually pull a number of items into here and allows us to be able to move quickly and be able to move forward in a very positive direction, so that we minimize our developmental efforts within Redwood. A lot of the number of the processes are already predetermined, if you will. We work with Redwood and we do some other design and enhancements and so forth like that. But out of the box, it's a pretty quick and easy to get up and running and to implement the processes, as well as with us utilizing that platform to develop our own in-house processes. The depth of knowledge was easy for us, and being able to utilize the tool and be able to come up and running and come up and running quickly on it and actually see benefit out of the gate. Bigger or more on top of that is standardization and centralization. So with the Redwood platform, we standardize, we look at getting our house in order, if you will, first before we do automation, and we standardize those processes. And also along with the standardization, we bring that as centralized within the Redwood platform, which actually helps us even from a cost savings perspective with audit fees and things of that nature like that, because we're centralized, because we're able to keep everything in a single place and drive it from that perspective. And then really the icing on the cake is the quality of data, because we're here centralized, because we standardize the processes, because we've gotten our house in order. The quality of the data is a lot better, and it allows us to actually during that close process to be able to not second guess ourselves and being able to let things flow through naturally as they should, thus adding to that time savings. So what I want to do is I want to walk you through kind of a synopsis of what those game changers are and kind of how it looks within Jabil. So if you look at box number 1 there, SOX and ITG compliancy, we've actually certified Redwood as a SOX compliant tool. So we've overcome the hurdle of actually every time you develop something, especially when you have to have SOX controls around it, the rigor and the process that goes around that, saves us a lot of time, saves us a lot of energy around that. So, but we were able to do that and get our systems compliant in a relatively quick period of time, which is really key. Number two is the alleviation of controls at the site. So as part of this, we've had a number of manual controls, a number of things that we had to do. We've kept them, we've had to keep them on different servers at different places and things of that nature like that. But because we've been able to bring those controls, we've been able to automate a number of those controls and bring the data and so forth like that within Redwood. We've actually got that performed it globally in a centralized instance in a centralized area, which makes input and retrieval a lot quicker and a lot easier to do. Number three there, on top of that, it allows us to spend less time or effort supporting our auditors. Because of having that centralized data within Redwood, it means less time that we have to spend with the auditors. Prior to Redwood, our external auditors would come and they'd actually go directly to the sites for those sites that were in scope for that year and actually ask the sites to provide this, and this, so on and so forth like that. And the issue was they go to different sites asking different questions, asking different ways of looking at it and so forth like that. Through the evolution of Redwood, we've been able to actually curtail that. We've been able to have meetings to set things up with our external auditors and say, look, we've got this tool. Here's the way you need to look at it. Here's all the questions that you've always been asking. Here's how we're answering those. And we've gotten them comfortable with that product, with that means of being able to look at the data and so forth like that, which has alleviated a lot of issues at the site level in terms of time, in terms of resurrecting the data that's being needed there, but allowing our sites to actually not have to worry about that anymore and focus on the things that they really need to do, and that's in terms of doing our close process. In turn, for number four there, it's actually helped us reduce our audit fees because we've centralized that. We've put things in a single instance, single place. Our auditors work with our internal audit. The data is provided in a very, very succinct manner, very quickly, and they're in and out. It's actually minimized helped us to alleviate any findings that would have been done from an audit perspective, and got us on a lot clearer path now. And then box number 5 is the risk-based analytics. We have some analytics behind the scenes here where we monitor what's going on and so on and so forth like that. The journal entries, account reconciliations, and so forth like that can all be performed within Redwood. But in terms of that, having that centralized location, having that standardization, it minimizes the risks that are associated with manual intervention, manual entry, and so on and so forth like that. And then the next one here, box 6. Is Redwood, which is really cool for us. It's fully customizable. I mean, the functionality within it. As I mentioned earlier, we've developed a number of in-house processes that allowed us to actually achieve benefit, achieve success, and really help our customers, our internal customers out to do the things that they need to do. So when we look at Jabil and Redwood, as I mentioned, Redwood provides a platform that allows us to do a number of different things. They have a number of pillars that they work with too. So we've got a good mix of what's custom to Jabil, if you will, of what we're working on and what we're doing, as opposed to what's out of the box out of Redwood. So I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but you can see that we've done a number of different things that are custom to Jabil, a number of controls, automations, and things of that nature like that. And we've got a backlog of things that we're going to be looking at for future automations. But out of the box for Redwood, the balance sheet certification has been huge for us. We're also in the midst of doing the closing task list, closing checklist, as well as more strong controls monitoring and management with using that functionality out of Redwood. And then we'll focus on the subledger processes. Redwood has a good set of subledger processes and so forth like that, but it's probably a little bit more overkill for Jabil. We only need things at a summarization level, so we're developing our own in-house for that. And then we'll follow through with manual journal entry processes and intercompany processes. The point being is that there's a number of good pillars within the Redwood, but the platform itself lends itself to ease of use and ease of development. And I think I'm going to turn this over to Susie for another poll question.
Thank you, Scott. Coming up on your screen now, we have our 4th poll question. How many days does it take for your company to close its books? 1 to 3 days, 4 to 7 days, 8 to 10 days, 11 to 15 days, or 16 days or more? How many days does it take for your company to close its books? 1 to 3 days, 4 to 7 days, 8 to 10 days, 11 to 15 days, or 16 days or more? So we're at about 58% of you responding. If you wouldn't mind responding in the next few seconds, I'm closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Again, about 62, 63% of you responding. So thank you for that. Let's have a look at the results. Just over a quarter of you say it takes between 1 and 3 days. 42% of you between 4 and 7 days. 21% 8 to 10. 3% 11 to 15, and 6% of you are saying it's 16 days or more. Okay, thank you. And back to you, please, Scott.
Sure. Next thing that I want to talk about, we talk about the platform, we talk about the FTT team and things of that nature like that, but there are some critical success factors to implementing the, not only this tool, but any tools, strategic tools in general. The old saying is it takes a community to move things forward. And we look at that from a community perspective in terms of how we implement Redwood within Jabil. So the first piece about that, if you look at that FTT circle that's on there, FTT, our team provides the strategic leadership and the ownership over the tool, as I mentioned earlier. The tool resides within finance and gives us those abilities to actually be very nimble, very quick, very quick to market, if you will, and different things of that nature like that. But we don't do it in a void. We work with primarily our financial reporting teams and so forth like that to actually make sure that we have the right policies and procedures that are in place, drive standardization across our segments, across our divisions, across our financial sites. Updating the docs, republishing, and things of that nature like that. And they're again not done in a void, but working with our sites, working with site finance, working with the business units and so forth like that, to make sure that we're answering the questions that they need, to make sure that they're providing the information back to us. They're giving us requirements, and they provide subject matter experts that are needed for design and testing and so forth like that. So it's within this community sphere, if you will, that allows us to be successful, that allows us to actually roll these things out in a clear, succinct manner, minimizing the change management that also goes along with this, because we've got the buy-in early on for the things that we're working through and that we want to drive to success. So within that, then, as we're rolling through and we look at the different products and different things that we roll out on there, I'll talk about the benefits from a Jabil perspective that we're receiving. One of them that I mentioned earlier is the alignment with with our site finances and with our shared services center. We have alignment with them of what we can do, what we can't do, and where we want to go, and driving a roadmap, a strategic and a tactical roadmap, with their input and with their support. We're SOX compliant. The tool is SOX compliant. We don't have to worry about that anymore moving forward. We can develop what we need to do within the Redwood platform. We already know that we're SOX compliant, and we can adhere to the ITGCs and so forth like that. It's flexible and it's scalable. There's pillars that are out of the box functionality for Redwood itself, but there's things that we can do internally that allow us to do those things quickly, allow us to roll them out quickly, and allow us to receive, more importantly, the benefit and the usage in a relatively quick period of time. I mentioned the streamlining of the audit. That's huge. If you guys are working with external auditors, you know how sometimes you can get beat up, or how sometimes they can lead you down a path you don't want to go down. So through this and within this, we've actually streamlined that. We've streamlined that process. We streamlined the interaction with our external auditors, which is a big bonus for us. We're fully supported by the FTT team. We own the product. We own the vision. We own the strategic nature of it. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, with input and with guidance from our strategic CFOs within the different divisions and such, and working with that moving forward. Importantly, it reduces the manual work time. That time savings, as I mentioned earlier, is huge. Especially during the month-end process. Anything you can save there, you guys probably know that going through that month-end close is huge. We at Jabil, we got a 5-day close, including the management reporting that goes on during that period of time. Don't get me wrong, we put a lot of elbow grease into it, but with the utilization of Redwood and where we're going with it, that's going to actually alleviate a lot of that time and allow us to actually not have to put in a lot of overtime, and allow us to have that a lot better quality of data. Also, as we're working through some things, and minimize our back and forth with the sites as things are rolling up. Which allows us to pivot to the analysis and the value add. We can actually look at the numbers and not in a non-rushed format, and actually make critical decisions in a quicker period of time. So, if you look at that from a Redwood perspective, and we look at our roadmap of where we've been and where we're going, we started out, as I mentioned, with the balance sheet certification process and rolled that out. Have been rolling that out over a period of time, and as part of that rollout, we started with Redwood on the on-prem platform. We work with Redwood. We work diligently with Redwood to develop the means of getting from the on-prem to the cloud version. We just went live on the cloud in January of this year, so we're fully in the cloud with Redwood. That was a very smooth experience once we went live on the cloud. No issues, no problems or anything of that nature like that. All of our data came forward, and we're really happy to be on the cloud. And there again, alleviate some of the admin burden, if you will, from our team that they had to do with the on-prem version. We also, like I said, we've developed a couple internal processes, but as we move forward, as you see on here, with where we're going and what we're doing, and we're ultimately going to save a great deal of time as we roll out off of the Redwood platform on there. As I mentioned earlier about getting our house in order and cleaning that up. I mean, we're working on the manual journal entries process and policies, setting new thresholds. At this point, we've designed the SOX control, the closing task list. So we've designed a global task list that we follow. We know that sites do have one-offs that they need to do, and we're working with the sites to build those one-offs within that task list. On top of that, all our SOX controls management and the repository of those controls, the evidence and so forth like that is actually being put into Redwood and driving it from a Redwood perspective. They're again driving centralization, standardization, good quality data. We are kicking off the closing task list here formally with our pilot sites later this month. And anticipating a good rollout as we move into our FY25, which will be starting a global rollout of that of FY25 in September of this year. Really, when you look at it as a whole, like I said, we cut our teeth on balance sheet certification. Our current state with balance sheet certification is that we've actually implemented close to 70 company codes at this point. We run our businesses based off of company codes. So we've got 70 company codes up and running on Redwood in 2 different instances of SAP. We are anticipating the end of this calendar year to be completed with that. And when we do have that completion from a pure balance sheet certification process, we'll have a total time savings of about $14,000 to $15,000 hours annually that you'll see on this next slide that I'm talking about here. But there again, it's fully supported. It's a fully supported rollout. We provide all the training and resources. It's fully SOX compliant, within there. And then when we actually took about it and we roll it all up into a good summary here in terms of the game changers themselves. I mean, we came here to talk about the 4 game changers in R2R, which were time savings, cost savings, standardization, centralization, quality of data. When we're looking at this slide here that talks about that, I really want to summarize this and talk about, what those time savings meant, what those time savings mean for us. So really at the completion of our month-end closing processes, along with the manual journal entry, along with intercompany and so forth like that, we will yield approximately 95,000 to 120,000 hours annually. That's a huge number. But using the technology, this Redwood technology, this Redwood platform, it's resulted in a good deal of cost savings already. And we'll continue to roll those out. It's helped us reduce our audit fees as well as developmental fees. And finally, by automating the manual tasks that the Redwood platform takes, it takes a huge amount of risk out of the equation, driving towards data quality and minimal rework, based on that. Thanks. And I'll turn it back over to Shaq to wrap us up.
Thank you, Scott. I think just to add to what Scott and Jabil have achieved over the past few years, I wanted to just give you another customer example and 1 or 2 different ways of looking at a quarter report. The obvious ones are looking at a more modular way, or we call pillars, because everything is integrated in a single platform, which is journal entry, accruals, intercompany that we talked about, and other areas. The other way, this customer example that I wanted to present here, was we looking at the record to report, the entity close activities within the time frame, whether you start at -5 or -4, whenever the 5-day close, it doesn't matter. And a record to report process consists of a series of activities that has to be performed within that time frame. And in this case, we looked at the entire close. There was something like 400 to 500 items there. And with the customer, they wanted to identify, first of all, time reduction. So it's kind of less about cost reduction, but what automation and the Redwood provides is reducing the time it takes to do things, because those items still have to be done, whether by people or Redwood. The other key areas also is to looking at the bottleneck. So quite often in these scenarios, there was some supply chain processes, etc. Although they didn't take a lot of time, the people are just waiting on those things to finish. So sometimes the bottleneck itself leads to as much time saving as some of the individual processes that take the time to close. The other thing I think Scott mentioned in one of our conversations, that if there are smaller tasks which perhaps are bottlenecks, but also they remain manual, that you can introduce errors because it is a manual task which can subsequently be consumed by later dependent tasks during the close. So it's as important to look at time saving and cost saving as it is from the controls, compliance, and the removal of potential errors in your close. So net gain for this customer was they reduced 86% reduction in time to close, but they were able to, 10 days is quite unusual, but that's where they were. But over the course of 2 years, they reduced their close from entity close from 10 days to 5 days. But a key benefit also, third point, is they were able to remove the bottlenecks that often held up the close. So with that, I just wanted to give you some view of some of our other customers in here. There really is, there's no, because although it is implemented, it can be implemented in a modular way, and we call it pillars because we are a single platform. There is no hard and fast rule where you start. So, for example, if GRIR is your biggest issue today, and in one customer example, I remember they had almost 100 million euros worth of GRIR issues sitting on their balance sheet as a liability. And if they didn't resolve that, it will soon become a P&L issue because they will start to have to write them off. So it doesn't matter where your issues are, you start there. On the left-hand side, you have companies like Arla, Danone, Siemens, Vodafone, and Schneider Electric. They said we want to automate their entire R2R, whereas quite rightly, Jabil said, hey, today, at that point in time, balance sheet reconciliation was their key issue. So that's where they started. Faurecia, with an now called Forvia, which is like, again, $30 billion organization, European organization with 5 different shared services in different continents. Their biggest issue is they were processing 32,000 journals a month, and all of the issues, controls, and compliance were there. So they addressed that first. So in summary, we have a lot of large customers using our record to report automation platform, and they really, there's no hard and fast rule where you start. You're just trying to address the problem that you face today. But the end journey is we work with you to help you get there, is we make your close a non-event. That's our objective.
That's great. Thank you so much to Scott and to Shaq. And let's take some questions. And as we are taking some questions that have come through, let's just launch this poll. Would you like a demo of the Redwood solution? So yes, please. Yes, maybe in the next few months or weeks, or maybe. So I'll leave that open for a little while we take some questions from the floor. So question for you, please, Scott. Can you tell us a little bit about your GBS setup, GBS shared services setup, what the locations, where the centers are based, sure, that kind of thing?
Sure. We have four sites that we utilize for our shared services center. One is in the Ukraine, one is in Penang, Malaysia, one is in Guadalajara, Mexico, one is in St. Petersburg, Florida. We also have an an offshoot where we're doing some things that are strictly within the China realm, within China.
Okay, thank
within
you.
that, they provide a number of different services back to our sites and do a number of processing around AP, AR, things of that nature like that. We're in the process of actually driving some more standardization within the shared services center and bringing in more providing more offerings back to the sites and bringing that processing within the shared services centers.
Okay, great. I think this is for you as well, Scott. What are the key concerns you get from companies? Okay, maybe this one's for Shaq. Shaq, what are the key concerns you get from companies looking to automate? What's some of the pushback? And maybe how do you help prospects deal with the pushback?
Often the pushback is that the processes are not harmonized or unified across the business unit. And that can be a barrier to starting the automation, because if you have a single process, let's pick one, doubtful debt provision or open PO call, doesn't matter. If you have 10 different ways of doing that, everybody has their own way, then you have to effectively automate all of them, which is a huge amount of effort. Whereas there's a good reason for having two different ways of doing the same thing, then it's perfectly okay to automate both of those, because you're trying to remove the manual effort and etc. So how we help is really a combination of ourselves and in combination with some partners. We help to look at the processes that are harmonized, but often start with your biggest, the most willing entity that is willing to conform. You start there and use that as an example for others to follow.
Great. Thank you. How would Redwood work if we have multiple ERP platforms?
Yeah, so Redwood is a kind of home of connectors. So over the past 30 years, we've all connectors to almost everything that's out there. Probably not everything, I'm sure. So the first thing is to understand your landscape. Is it majority SAP and some others? And the idea would be then we'll look at if they have published API that we can connect to them. If they don't have, if we know them, then we probably have connectors. So we just need to look at that.
Okay. This one is for Scott. Time saved by Jabil, 17,000 hours. Was that total time saved or only by the implementation of the last module, task management?
So the 17 hours is a cumulative number. And as I mentioned, when we get done with balance sheet certification, we'll have closer probably to 18,000 hours with balance sheet certification rollout. But cumulative, we have that on an annual basis.
Okay, thank you. How does so I think I'll put this one to Shaq. How does the account reconciliation work in Redwood? If you could just walk us through the account reconciliation automation and how that works in the Redwood tool, please, Shaq.
I mean, obviously, Scott's a bigger expert in account reconciliation in Redwood than perhaps I am, but I can just tell you, when you do account reconciliation, 70% of the effort is preparer's work. Then perhaps 20 to 30% is compliance and control, which is the key reason why you do account reconciliation, because they need to be certified and need to satisfy the auditors. That's where the force comes from. And then the preparers do all of the work. The difference is, in Redwood, we automate the preparers' work, and we also help do the compliance and control part. And then I would invite Scott to say a word or two on that, because he's a real practitioner.
No, you're correct. I mean, from a Redwood perspective, we pull the GLs outside from SAP into Redwood, along with all their associated data. The preparers go through that. In the past, they actually had to, before Redwood, they would pull it out of SAP onto a spreadsheet, do a bunch of manipulations and things of that nature like that. and then they would get it prepared. They would send it to the site controller. The site controller would review it, and he or she would sign off of it, doing screen prints, a litany of different things within Redwood. Like I said, those GLs are pulled in Redwood. The preparers go through those. As part of that pulling through, we use part of the Redwood data transformer to do some summarization, different things of that nature with the numbers. Preparers, press a button, it goes to the approver. The approver either approves it or sends it back to the preparer for more details or what have you. But ultimately, when the approver approves it, it stays within Redwood. We've already got all the evidence that we need there within Redwood in order to satisfy the SOX controls perspective, and we're ready to roll.
Perfect. Thank you so much. More questions come through. So what are the tool limitations in terms of interaction with different programs apart from SAP, i.e. Microsoft Excel, VBA scripts, Google Chrome, download of documents from links? So can I put that one to Shaq and Scott, if you have any experience of working with other?
From a Jabil perspective, we work with spreadsheets. We can pull, Redwood's, somewhat agnostic, if you will. We can pull, some of our self-developed processes. We pull spreadsheets, pull Excel into it, Excel data out of it into Redwood. We also, we work with other systems. We actually have hooks into our Cognos controller system for when we're doing some of the work on the consolidations and so forth like that. We have the ability to hook into our TM1 system. So, it's not just SAP centric. There are capabilities to look outside of your ERP systems, if you will.
Okay, great. Can you tell us a little bit about time to implementation? So as far as getting a pilot started, what was the time taken for a pilot?
For a pilot,
phases.
For pilot site, I'll use closing task list. We're getting ready to do that right now. We've already designed the global checklist that we will follow. It's already been reviewed with the sites. We identified what sites that we want to utilize for the pilots, which is a mix of China, India, US, and Europe. We will later this month. We actually will get with the sites and go through the design with them, make sure that everything's okay with them, that there's no hiccups. What we will do through this, we will actually run a parallel run with a month end, and then a parallel run at quarter end. On our production systems with what they're doing now versus what's being done in Redwood. And then we will look in fourth quarter to have everything set up, which is our fourth quarter in the August timeframe, have everything set up and ready to start the global rollout of this in September. So it's relatively quick. Once we got we got what we determined what would be our benefits and so forth like that, presented to our execs, signed off on it, signed off on who we thought would be the best teams to actually help pilot this. And so, from that perspective, it was, that was just a few weeks, whatever, to get all of our ducks in a row, to get time on the calendar to do the presentation. And now it's really just a matter of waiting for us to actually start the pilot sites on there. We have actually, in order for us to do that, we've got to do an upgrade to Redwood based on the version of Redwood that uses their Power BI dashboards for the visualization piece of the closing checklist, which we're in the process of doing now. So It's a matter of months is what the question is, what the answer is.
And Shaq, anything you want to add to that, please?
Yeah. I think when you talk about a pilot, it's everything surrounding the configuration. The configuration part, it's 20 odd days in terms of, but the pilot is bigger than that, right? Pilot is actually making it work in one country or one company or a couple of countries. So I think we'll agree with the time frame. It depends on the definition of pilot versus proof of concept.
Yeah. Okay. Question for you, please, Scott. Is there an SOD concept built into Redwood, or maybe this is more for Shaq, or does this have to be set up differently per engagement?
I think Scott is a very good person to answer that.
So from a SOD perspective, I mean, obviously when we're working with SAP, we set up Redwood as an RFC user going into Redwood. That RFC user goes through the same process that any other user would go through in terms of going through the GRC, going through a SOD check and so forth like that. So we have the capabilities of you actually using that RFC user, or if we have to do something that's truly from a SOD perspective, we can actually use the actual user and log that actual user for any postings that go into SAP. And Redwood, as it's going in and interacting with SAP, it'll check their security and make sure that they have the capabilities of doing it, that that user isn't violating any SOD parameters.
Okay, great. Another one for you, Scott. How is the performance of the data transformer for transforming a huge volume of data?
Not sure what you mean by a huge volume of data. We're doing thousands of entries that we're using from a data transformer perspective. At this point, our performance is good. I mean, we did have some performance issues early on. The great news is we've got a great partnership with Redwood, and we walked through the issues, and they were able to tweak what needed to be done in order to alleviate some of those performance constraints. And as we're on the cloud right now, we're seeing even really good performance on there. We're very surprised. We're pleasantly surprised. We're really happy with the performance at this juncture, and we're processing a large number of items.
Great. Question for you, Scott. What tools were you using before you started with Redwood, please?
Spreadsheets. I mean, like I said, it's very manual with a lot of these things that we're doing. We're using spreadsheets, the data pulls, and things of that nature like that.
Okay. And this one is for Shaq. Where does Redwood typically advise to start within R2R? In terms of automation?
Sorry, I missed the first few words. Where does Redwood
where would Redwood advise to start in terms of R2R automation?
Wow, that's almost looking at where your issues are. If you're being really simplistic, checklist is the easiest thing. Automating checklist, it gives you a global visibility, transparency. But what you've done is just automated your checklist. You haven't automated anything, right? The second obvious easy thing is to automate all of your SAP closing tasks. You have lots of transactions that needs to be done. That's a very easy thing to do. So if you're looking for an easy step, that's that. But my suggestion is to look at where the bottlenecks and where the issues are within R2R and start there, because it may seem hard, but you'll get the. So it depends what your objective are. Get it going, checklist, tackle the hard stuff, look at the bottlenecks and issues on your record to report.
And that's what we did with Jabil. I mean, obviously, when you looked at the poll that you had done earlier, the challenges that people are seeing are really around the balance sheet reconciliation and certification, and even with our internal survey, that's what we found as being the top challenge within Jabil. So we went and tackled the top challenge out of the box.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Good. I think we're going to leave it there. There are a couple of other questions which I think Redwood is going to pick up with some of the viewers directly, but let's leave it there. We've asked and had answered a lot of questions. So thank you very much for all of that. Thanks for your time. And Shaq, thanks so much. Scott, thanks so much for joining us today. And we look forward to welcoming you next time. Thanks so much and goodbye.